Hello fans and friends across the universe and welcome to my YouTube channel From Me to You. My name's Keir Smith. For today's video I'd like to talk about one of George Harrison's least popular albums, ExtraTexture, but I'm here to tell you that it really isn't that bad. Coming off the back of his ill-fated North American tour in late 1974, George was exhausted and the recent criticism of his Dark Horse album did little to lift his mood. George told Derek Taylor, the former Beatles press officer and good friend, "When I got off the plane back home, I went into the garden and I was so relieved. That was the nearest I got to a nervous breakdown. I couldn't even go into the house." And so it was surprising that George went back into the studio only a few months later to record what would become ExtraTexture. It was his last album released on the Apple label, and the songs and the mood of the album reflect upon what George called his naughty period. And it's the sound of a tired, weary, and unhappy George who was, quite frankly, losing faith. And ExtraTexture is an album that has long been disregarded by critics, Beatles fans, and George fans, but not by me. George was going through a really tough period, and at this point in his life, he needed a big hug, and so does this album. And so, with that said, let's get to the music. The album opens with the fantastic lead-off single, You, which is certainly the happiest song here. This song was a leftover from back in 1971 and was originally recorded with Ronnie Spector in mind, and the key is much too high for George to sing, although he certainly gives it a good go. And despite the slight and easy lyrics, this is a bright and buoyant pop song with galloping drums, nice arpeggio guitar patterns, and a blaring saxophone played by Jim Horn, which George said was one of the nicest rock and roll sounds I've heard in years. And I agree, that saxophone really makes the song, and I love this song. It's a great song, and it's my favourite song on the album. And so it's all downhill from here. The second track is The Answers at the End. Scan not a friend with a microscopic glass. You know his faults, now let his foibles pass. George drew inspiration from Sir Frankie Crisp, who was the original owner of his Friar Park home. And I rather like these philosophical lyrics, and musically it's piano, strings, a nice weeping guitar solo. It's a slow ballad and it reaches for something grandiose, but it never quite reaches it. And another criticism is it's overly long. It runs at some 5.5 minutes, but it could have quite easily at 3.5 minutes for me. But it's not a bad song, but I'm left with the feeling of wanting a bit more. Next we have This Guitar Can't Keep From Crying, and this is a sequel to the brilliant Beatles song. Lyrically, George links emotion to his instrument and takes pop at Rolling Stone magazine along the way, who had been very critical of George's North American tour and Dark Horse album. But I do like the moody string arrangement here, and I think it works really well around George and Jesse Ed Davis, who trade some great guitar solos. And this is a really good song. Ooh Baby, You Know That I Love You is next, and this is a slow, mellow and soulful track with electric piano, guitars and horns blending together nicely to make a nice but repetitive song. Again, this song might have been shorter and George's vocals aren't quite up to scratch here, but it's a song I like. I think with this and a few other songs on this album, had they been recorded further down the line with a bit more focus and dedication to the composition, I think they could have been made more. And the next song, World of Stone, is a good example of that. And for years, whenever I thought of ExtraTexture, I always forgot about this one. This slow, moody piano ballad is okay, and the choral backing vocals are nice and lift the song slightly, but it's a bit of a dirge. George sings, "Wise men you won't be to follow the like of me," and further proving that he was really down on himself here. I'm sure this song has its fans, but it's probably my least favourite song on the album. It closes side one in a rather bleak way. Side two opens with a bit more of You, and it is what it says it is, a short excerpt from the track on side one. And why not? It puts a smile on my face, especially after the weighty themes covered on most of side one. And that's followed by Can't Stop Thinking About You, which is a smooth and soulful ballad. And I really like Nicky Hopkins' piano playing here, and the string arrangement is good and adds to the song well. Again, this song is a little repetitive, but that chorus is so good, and I love the backing vocals, so I'd rinse it for all it's worth too. There's a warmth to this, and it's a really good song, and it serves as the calm before the dreary storm ahead. And the mood is bleak, but the next song, Tired of Midnight Blue, is very good. Leon Russell plays the lovely piano here around George's soulful and bluesy guitar licks. And lyrically, this is George's lament to a night out where he wishes that he hadn't have bothered. And this is another moody song, but I think George sings it well. In fact, I'd say it's his best vocal on the album. And Tired of Midnight Blue is one of the few songs on ExtraTexture that has actually garnered praise over the years from critics, and so it should, because it's a good song. The penultimate track on the album is the utterly despondent Grey Cloudy Lies, a song which George called one of those depressing 4 o'clock in the morning songs. And lyrically, George sings of padlocks, battlefields, fights, and more alarmingly, a pistol at my brain. And musically, this is slight, but I really like it. Those rising piano chords blend well with the Moog synthesizer, and they provide a strong melody to the song for me. And though his vocal is really sad, I think George's voice lends itself well here. And you may call me morbid, but this is actually my second favourite song on the album, behind You. I think it's great. And the last track on the album is His Name is Legs, ladies and gentlemen, a tribute to George's friend, Legs Larry Smith, who was the drummer of the 60s comical Bonzo Dog Doodah band. And this song starts and it chugs along and it's okay, it's a bit funky, there's some nice horns, and Willie Weeks is doing his best with some nifty bass lines. But you can barely hear what George is singing about through that muddy production, and then you get this spoken monologue which is undecipherable by Legs Larry Smith. And apparently this song was an in-joke and a bit of light-hearted fun, which I can understand at the end of such a dark and miserable album. And I hope they had fun recording it, but everything is not dinky-doo, and this song is a mess. Apparently it was a leftover from the Dark Horse sessions, and if it wasn't good enough for that album, it certainly isn't good enough for this. So all in all, ExtraTexture, it isn't that bad. There's some really nice melodies here, and some genuinely moving and heartfelt lyrics from George. And for sure, it's gloomy, it's dark, it's not particularly inspiring, but if, like me, you enjoy licking your wounds and having a good sulk from time to time, then this album is a trusted companion. Admittedly, it's not an album for everyone, but it's an album that I revisit often and enjoy. So come on, all you ExtraTexture fans. I know there aren't many of you, but leave a comment below and shine a light on this album. And if you're not a fan of this album, maybe give it one more listen and come back and tell me what you think. But as always, thank you so much for stopping by and watching this video. I hope you enjoyed it, and until next time, peace and love. Bye for now.